Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pradurajikacharya Stotra Shatri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Just turn it on. I can put my computer on. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nasta Prayasha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavate Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So today, let's see what's happening. Do you have the remote for this thing? Reading from Canto 3, The Status Quo, Chapter 19, Lord Boar kills the demon Hiranyaksha, text 17. Let's see if the magic technology can work. I have to be on the same Wi-Fi as this thing. Let's see if it works now. Yeah, there it is. There we go. Atorudha Janmayam Yoga Mayeshvare Haro Yam Vilokya Pajastrastha Minire Syo Pasam Yamam Atoruja Jamayam Yogamai Haro Yam Vilokya Prajastrasta Minire Syo Pasam Yamam Toruda Janmayam Yoga Mayeshvare Haro Yam Vilokya Prajastrasta Minire Syopasam Yamam Toruda Janmayam Yoga Mayeshvare Haro Yoga Prajastrasta Hare Krishna. Ata, then, Urudha, in many ways, Ashrijat, he cast, Mayam, conjuring tricks, Yogamaya Ishvare, the Lord of Yogamaya, Haro, at Hari, Yam, which, Vilokya, after seeing Praja, the people, Trastha, fearful, Menire, thought, Asya, of this universe, Upasamyamam, the dissolution. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The demon, however, employed many conjuring tricks against the personality of Godhead, who is the Lord of Yogamaya. At the sight of this, the people were filled with alarm and thought that the dissolution of the universe was near. Please repeat. The demon, however, employed many conjuring tricks against the personality of Godhead, who is the Lord of Yogamaya. At the sight of this, the people were filled with alarm and thought that the dissolution of the universe was near. Purport. The fighting enjoyment of the Supreme Lord with his devotee, who had been converted into a demon, appeared severe enough to bring about the dissolution of the universe. This is the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the wavering of his little finger appears to be a great and very dangerous movement in the eyes of the inhabitants of the universe. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bhagam Langayate Giram Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishram Hari Om Tat Sat. Atoru Dashri Janmayam Yoga Mayeshvare Haro Yam Vilokya Prajastrastha Menire Sopasam Yamam. And then the demon employed many conjuring tricks against the personality of Godhead, who is the Lord of Yoga Maya. At the sight of this, the people were filled with alarm and thought that the dissolution of the universe was near. So we're nearing the end. We've been in this storyline for quite some time. We're nearing the end of the battle. Well, before speaking, I'd like to receive the blessings of Krishna Kripa Prabhu, as he's very senior, and a junior speaking in front of a senior should always request blessings, and that way culture can be nicely upheld, and maybe I can say something nicely. So I tried to prepare a little bit for this, and one thing I was thinking is that during this fight, we've been hearing about this fight for a while, from Hiranyaksha going to Varuna and asking for a fight, then him telling him, oh, you have to find the Supreme Lord. Then we hear about him finally finding the Supreme Lord as he's uplifting the earth due to it being degraded. And we hear how that's actually two different kalpas happening at the same time. And for some reason or another, I believe Vidura is describing this, or Maitreya is describing this to Vidura right now, that Maitreya decided to combine some of the description. And now finally they're getting to a fight, and it's been pretty epic, and now we're going to get to near the end of it. And this is generally how fights go when there's fights between the demons and the demigods, that the demigods they always have the upper hand at first, but then the demons decide to pull out some sort of trick, and they try to cheat, or somehow in other ways they're like masters of all these kind of crazy illusions, and so we'll hear about some of that. Before this happened, at the end of the last chapter, Lord Brahma was warning the Lord. He said, oh, the Abhijit Muhurta, where you would definitely be victorious, has already passed. And now it's coming towards the time when, it'll be the dark time of the universe. And so all the demons will get so much more power. And so you should defeat him now, before that happens, before he gets into the power. And so, of course, the Lord, however, if we have heard the whole Bhāgavatam and understand the background of what's happening here, in this fight with this demon is actually, he's not a demon, he's a devotee. He was Jai or Vijay, I'm not sure which one. And one of the backstories is, or what happened is that they heard Jai and Vijay were hearing different gossip in Vaikuntha about the Lord and him fighting and killing so many demons. And they were thinking in their mind, oh, how super excellent would it be to see the Lord fighting and killing demons. And he never has the opportunity to do that here in Vaikuntha because there's no demons. We have the guards here, we're always protecting it, there's no demons here. So when they thought like that, they had a desire to serve the Lord like that. And then we hear about how the four Kumaras end up cursing them, and then they get asked, do you want to come back after 7 lives as devotees of the Lord, or 3 lifetimes as demons of the Lord, as demons against the Lord? And they decide to come back sooner rather than later, and they play the part of demon 3 times. And so these first 2 demons are the most epic, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, able to take over the entire universe. Even though Ravan was still kind of epic, they weren't as epic. These 2 demons had separate incarnations of the Lord to fight with them, whereas Lord Ram killed both Kumbhakarna and Ravana. And then when we hear about Krishna killing Shishupal and Dantavakra, people forget who Dantavakra is because he's such a minor demon, and his death is just like a sentence, more or less, in the Bhāgavatam, and we forget that. Whereas this one is how many chapters have we been hearing about this since, it's 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 4 or 5 chapters of the whole Bhāgavatam is dedicated just to Hiranyaksha getting killed. And then what to speak of Hiranyakashipu, he practically gets the whole 7th canto. So they're having this epic fight, and the Lord is telling him, Lord Brahma is telling the Lord that he should have killed him during Abhijit Muhurta. So we understand about the nature of time. Time is not some simple linear thing. It's extremely complex. And so those sages that have seen and understood the science, they've explained that there's during different times when we go throughout the day, it's auspicious and different things change and becomes inauspicious. So this Abhijit Muhurta is considered one of the most auspicious ones, and the way you calculate Muhurtas is based off where the rising and the setting of the sun. So we're all devotees, we all understand Brahma Muhurta, which is calculated as approximately an hour and a half before the sun rises, which in the average place, if we're near the equator or something like that, or in India, usually it happens around 4, 4:30, 5 o'clock, depending on if it's in the summertime or in the winter time. And of course, if you go somewhere extremely north or weird, like in Norway or something like that, it's exactly calculating it due to the position of the sun may not make sense, because sometimes the sun doesn't even set for a month or something like that. Like if you're in the Arctic Circle and you're in Antarctica. So Prabhupada fixed our Mangala Arti at 4:30 a.m. and he recommended that everyone rise by 4 a.m. And in the different Vedic angas, we can see some different good reasons for this. Like in Ayurveda, they classify the time in terms of which dosha is prominent or like supported by the time. So, and it's actually pretty easy to remember. This is also somewhat varying due to the sunrise and the sunset, but in general, from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. is Vata time. So that's the best time for thinking, contemplation. Like Vata means movement, doing things related to that. And so that's our Brahma Muhurta, normally 4:30 to 6, or 4:30 till 5:30, approximately every day. It gets some of that support, so it's very good for us to like control our mind. Vata is related to the mind and the nervous system, and also the modes fluctuate, and each part of the day gets a certain mode. And the only time when Sattva Gun is really activated is during the Brahma Muhurta, from around 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. is what they say. And then 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., that's the time for work, when everyone's awake, when everyone's doing things. And then from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m., then Tamagun kicks in, where most people are sleeping, or if they're not sleeping, they're doing something like, have you ever heard this statement, like nothing good happens after like 2 a.m. or something, or nothing good happens after midnight? And that's because that's just when Tamagun is very present, so no one makes any good decisions after that point. The robbers are staying awake, waiting for everyone to fall asleep so they can do something. Or we lived near the Bhakti Center, and so we would always walk there like 3 or 4 in the morning, and you see it just at that time, everyone's been like getting drunk and doing drugs and doing whatever they can to get their sense gratification. And by that time, they're completely exhausted and angry and upset. And so, yeah, that's when the time for Tamagun, 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. But then 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., that's the Sattva Gun time. So Prabhupada was very stressful for all his disciples to wake up at least by 4 a.m. so that we would catch that sattvic time and be able to increase the Sattva Guna in our body. Which of course, as devotees, if we practice devotional service, we're beyond the modes, as Krishna says. But it's very helpful. Sattva Guna is the most helpful platform to be on. If we're in Tamagun too much, then it'll be very difficult for us to actually perform devotional service, whereas in Sattva Gun it becomes almost natural. And so this is the Brahma Muhurta, why it's important. And then we hear about this Abhijit Muhurta, which Lord Brahma is telling. So Abhijit Muhurta is calculated but right when the sun is overhead. And so like when the sun is overhead, then you have no shadows. And so this is also symbolic, like there's no dark things, there's no demons, all the demonic influence is completely negated during that time. So it's actually considered, no matter what the day is, but for some reason Wednesday is, so some astrologers say that Wednesday Abhijit Muhurta is no good. But generally speaking, you can do anything on Abhijit Muhurta, like a business deal or important transaction or anything like that, and it'll always be a very auspicious time, no matter what the charts of the individuals have, because all the negative influences are at zero. This is known as it's also known that Lord Shiva, he triumphed over a famous demon, Triparasura, during this time. And so Lord Brahma was telling Lord Bor to kill the demon at this time, because this is the most auspicious time. And while that was good advice in one sense, in the other sense it doesn't really make sense, because the Lord he's the controller of time. I mean, he is time, he is all these modes of nature. He's the one that's empowering the demons to get powerful during these bad muhurtas. He's the one empowering the demigods. And so since he's completely beyond it, whether or not he wants to kill him during one time or the other. And I thought it was funny, I was reading one of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentaries on that, and it was just saying that, well, the Lord was enjoying the fighting so much that he kind of lost track of time and let it go till late. And we also hear, apparently, when it gets later during the night, then the demon's power becomes much more amplified. If anyone's heard the Mahabharata, there's like many times when, like, say Bhima is fighting one of the demons, they always say, Bhima, quickly kill him, because soon it's going to be twilight and then he's going to become super powerful and you won't be able to defeat him. So sometimes it makes sense if you're talking about some jiva or some mortal person trying to kill a demon who may get a bit better advantage. But if we're talking about the Supreme Lord, then he can kind of do what he wants. And so the Supreme Lord was having a lot of fun during this fight, because actually also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says the demon and the Lord were actually the same strength the Lord would empower the demon so much because ultimately he's his devotee. So they had the same strength. Because otherwise, if you fight someone that's way less strength, then it's no fun. Like recently, like they have weight classes and all the kinds of different boxing and everything. And if someone from the big weight class fights someone from the small weight class, it's almost always, they just get destroyed, because if you're way smaller than someone, you can't really hurt them. Like if I was going to go try to fight Sundar Chaitanya, it wouldn't be a very interesting fight, but if me and Nate got into a fight, then maybe that'd be more interesting, because we're similar size. I mean, Nate would probably beat me. I don't know, practice in fighting. But so similarly, the Lord empowered Hiranyaksha to be of similar strength, so that he could actually enjoy the fight, because it's kind of this wonderful thing where, and this is what happens in Vaikuntha, in the spiritual world, in Vrindavan, is that the devotees, they want something, but they don't want it to make them happy. They want it to make the Lord happy. And the Lord wants something, but he doesn't want it to make him happy. He wants something to make his devotees happy. So it's like this cycle of I want to make you happy. He's like, no, I want to make you happy more. And so let's do this. Okay, I'll do this to make you happy. Oh, okay, I'm doing this to make you happy. So like Giant Vijay, they saw the Lord, they say, okay, we want to be able to make the Lord happy by fighting. So the Lord says, okay, I'll make this whole arrangement so that I can fulfill your desire, because I know that'll make you happy because you're making me happy. And so it's just a contest between them who can become the most happy. And that's one reason why this the Vaikuntha realm and Vrindavan and everywhere can be eternal, because it's constantly increasing. And if it wasn't increasing, if we have the same enjoyment every day, you can't really do that eternally, because it becomes tasteless. When we first came to New York, we were having the same thing every day. And I remember one day Ram Roy was just khichdi, pasta, khichdi, pasta. Because 2 or 3 months, each day we would have khichdi and then pasta, and then khichdi and then pasta, and it was all we were having. And it gets, especially if you don't, they say spice or variety is the spice of life, or variety is the mother of enjoyment. Without having varieties of enjoyment, even the most enjoyable thing becomes dull, and they call it hackneyed. So the spiritual world is not dull and hackneyed. It's very wonderful, and because part of this is because the Lord and his devotee are always in competition to come up with new and better ways to please each other, and they have no desire to please themselves. So it's kind of that whole cycle would end, okay, so I want to please someone, and then they want to please me. Oh, okay, then I got what I want, then I don't want to please them anymore. It would kind of stop the cycle. But because both the participants, the Lord and his pure devotee, they have no desire for their own gratification, then it becomes this wonderful, infinite return of energy back and forth, and it can just last forever. So I was thinking of a few times when the demons were performing different conjuring tricks. That's what Maitreya is explaining to Vidura. He's like, yeah, the personality of Godhead, who's the Lord of all tricks, he's about to get tricks put on him by the demon, and everyone was getting scared. They thought the universe was coming to an end. So we hear a similar thing in the 4th canto, where Dhruva, his brother actually got killed by the arrangement of the Lord, by the way, by the demons, because originally Dhruva wanted his brother dead because he was so upset that his stepmom said, you'll never be able to sit on the throne unless you die and you come out of another body and you come out of my womb. Because he was asking, he just wanted to sit in the lap of his father, but his mother was so harsh that it just boiled his blood. And then we all know the famous story of how he did his famous meditation and attained the Lord. And so anyway, his mother ends up dying in a fire, and his brother ends up getting killed by these demons. And so he gets so upset with these demons that he starts to attack them, and they end up shooting a whole complete rain of of weapons that blackens the sky, and then somehow Dhruva vanquishes that, and then so they realize that they're kind of screwed because Dhruva is super powerful, and then they do what all demons do. They resort to all their best weapon, their illusions. So they make this really loud, deafening noise. They make a big dust storm, a big thunderstorm where it starts raining, and it's not only raining rain, but it's raining blood, it's raining mucus, it's raining pus and stool and urine and bone marrow. And also it says it's raining the trunks of bodies, which I think that means like if they're like decapitated and they don't have any legs and just like bodies are just coming out of, so that's really freaky. And then all of a sudden a gigantic mountain just appears in the sky, and all kinds of gigantic hail starts falling, and then these pointy stones start falling, and all kinds of weapons like swords and maces, and then fire-breathing snakes and elephants and lions start running at him, and a gigantic tsunami is coming at him, and this is like so many ridiculous things just start happening. But then we hear at the end of that chapter that the sages, which were inspired by the Lord, they come and they tell Dhruva, and they say that, they hint to him that the Lord's holy name is actually the best way to cut through all the illusion. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that if simply by chanting the holy name we can surpass the whole material ocean and all of our different illusions really related to our false ego, and attain the supreme realm of Vaikuntha or Vrindavan, then what to speak of a few little illusions made by some measly yakshas. And so that's also a hint for us. The demons are always trying to do their illusions, make the world seem like a nice place. But if we're chanting the holy name, then we can cut through all of that and be situated in truth. There's many examples of this demons using illusions. Like in the Mahabharata, there's a case where Arjuna, he gets celestial combat training by Lord Indra, and then Lord Indra, he asked Lord Indra what he wants for his dakshin. So dakshin, like daksha. Does anyone know what daksha means? So we remember? Yeah, expert. So what's daksha expert in? Yeah, he's expert in procreation, so he's known as daksha, expert. So dakshin comes from that same word daksha, which means expert. So when a teacher makes someone expert, then the idea in Vedic culture is that's the time when they should actually really pay. That now the system is kind of different, that you go to college and you just pay for all 4 or 6 or 8 years or whatever, if you're getting a PhD, sometimes more. And it doesn't really matter whether you're expert or not. You get some sort of degree, but that doesn't really mean anything. The most things people get expert at college, at least in my experience, was how to get so drunk on the weekend and just recover yourself enough that you could study the day before the exam, that you wouldn't fail the exam, and that way you just make your way through. The people are the most expert at doing the very least possible, but still getting the result. Whereas in Vedic culture, say you're learning anything, when you become expert, then you ask the teacher what do they want as payment for their years of sacrifice in teaching. And so when the science has been thoroughly imparted to the student, then the student can use that to make some money, and then he can actually properly pay. And generally they ask the teacher what do they want. So in this case, Arjuna was so strong, he was asking Indra, like, what can I do? And Indra's like, okay, you kill these demons that are, have been my enemies for a long time. They live in this place under the water, these Danava demons. And so Arjuna first goes there and he blows his conch, and they all come out really angry, and he just starts decimating them. And so demons do what demons do, and they start getting messed with. They resort to their illusions. And so Arjuna faced similar tricks that Dhruva faced. One thing, when the demons do these tricks, they become invisible. You can't see them, and then all these crazy things start happening. So, rocks start showering, a big rainstorm. That is like, it seemed like they couldn't tell the difference between the earth and the sky. There was just a big blanket of water coming down. Then a bunch of fire comes and starts burning everyone, and a hurricane. a shower of all kinds of iron weapons. And it says at one moment the earth seemed covered by darkness. Then the other moment it seemed it was completely submerged in water. Then it completely disappeared. And so it looks like you were just stuck in outer space. And so it was like a real mind trip. And Arjuna uses various celestial weapons and realizes that even though the demons are invisible, he can like use heat, demon-seeking like arrows, and ends up just killing them all and completely defeats them. Of course, because Arjuna is empowered by the Lord, nothing a little few demons, they can't really affect him, especially when he has all his secret weapons. But then we hear later when Arjuna, all that empowerment is taken away, he can't, what to speak of killing the most powerful demons that even Indra had trouble with. Then a few cowherd boys are stealing all of Krishna's wives, which Arjuna is trying to transport. And Arjuna can't even pull back his bow. So actually, from that we can realize that the Lord is in control of everything, even our ability to speak, our ability to think, our ability to move our limbs in the proper way. He is the fire of digestion, our ability to eat and get energy from that. And so we're completely dependent on the Lord. We should recognize that. Then in the 8th canto, there's another story where after Mohini gave the nectar to the demigods and neglected the demons, the demons all became angry and wanted to battle them, which is kind of stupid because if all your adversaries, like if I was about to fight Nate, but I realized Nate just took some nectar of the demigods, some immortal nectar, then that would be pretty dumb on my part because it makes you like invincible. But anyways, they decide to fight the demigods, and with Maharaj Bali as the head of the demons, which even though Maharaj Bali is a devotee, he's one of the Mahajans. When he's getting defeated and his whole army is getting crushed by Indra and their army, he also similarly resorts to all kinds of demoniac illusions. He becomes invisible and then makes it seem like there's a big mountain falling down, and then after that there's a forest, but it's on fire, and that's also raining down on them. There's so many sharp rocks. Then he makes scorpions, snakes, and poisonous animals, lions, tigers, and boars, oh my, and elephants. And it seems like they're crushing everyone. Then all these carnivorous demons, like we see the paintings of sometimes when people try to paint demons, they'll come out completely naked and are cursing and going to kill everyone. And then all these hot coals start falling from the sky, and it seems like all the demigods are getting burned and killed by all this, and then a gigantic flood's coming. But then the demons, or the demigods, they took shelter of the Lord and they remembered the Lord. And by that, the Lord agreed to reveal his presence there. And just simply by his presence on the battlefield, after manifesting himself, all the illusions were completely dispelled. So this is, like the same thing that the sages told Dhruva, just remember the name of the Lord. Similarly, the demigods here were just remembering the Lord. And the Lord can come in his name, he can come in his form, he can come in so many different unlimited ways, and can completely help the devotee dispel all kinds of illusions. Krishna says one who's dedicated to serving him and serving him with love, he actually gives them the intelligence to do whatever they need to do. Even if we're blinded by some sort of ignorance, he says he can become the torchlight of knowledge to dissipate all of that. Manmana bhava mad bhakto mam yaji mam namaskuru. If you engage your mind in thinking of Krishna, and if you worship Krishna, then mam evaishishi yukt vaivam. Krishna says you'll come to him. And this verse is like one of the central verses of the whole Bhagavad Gita. It's repeated twice, and it's exactly right in the middle, 9:34. But then also Krishna says it at the end in the 18th chapter. And they say the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are if you consider the whole Bhagavad Gita like a treasure chest, the first 6 are the bottom part of a treasure chest, the last 6 are the top, and then the middle is the 6 chapters are considered the treasure. So by that metaphor, this verse is one of the prime jewels, you could say. And Krishna is telling Arjuna, if he just engages your mind if we just engage our mind in Krishna, then we'll come to Krishna, and all the things that are blocking us, all these illusory things that are stopping us from coming to Krishna will be dissolved. The illusion will be broken, and we'll be under the best protection. Like before Krishna says that, he's talking about the Mahatmas. Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim prakritam ashrita. Those Mahatmas that are always engaged in devotional service to the Lord, they're protected by Krishna's internal potency. And what are they doing? Satatam kirtayanto mam. They're always glorifying the Lord because their minds are always on the Lord. Like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that glorifying the Lord, doing kirtan, is the best way to remember the Lord, because it, like you're going up to someone and you're just telling them about Krishna. You have to go through your brain of everything you've heard about Krishna and extract it and think about it and then put it out there. And so it's the best way to focus your remembrance of the Lord, to do it. And so that's why it's known as the Yuga Dharma, because in this age our minds are so weak, our lives are so short, and it's hard to do very much to uplift our consciousness. So we need kind of like the sharpest knife, the quickest method, the easiest way, the easiest shortcut. And so that's what all the great sages, Vyasadeva and everyone, and the Lord has proclaimed for us, is that if we can just remember the Lord's name, and we can do it in a bigger group, then all of the Lord's Shaktis can be there, and all of the different problems, even though we may not understand exactly even what the illusions are, that the demons and the different negative things that are happening, that the Lord can just take care of it even without our understanding. And if we take shelter of the Lord, He'll constantly give us a situation where we can keep advancing. Ananyash chintiyanto mam, that He carries what we lack. If we're actually engaged in devotional service to Him, He'll carry whatever we lack. He'll stop whatever problems are stopping us from whatever kind of thing we're trying to do for Him, and that He'll keep preserving what we have. Like even in this time of like doing this Harinam, so many people left to like go to India, to go to get Bhakti Shastri, to go do this and do that. But then somehow, without me planning anything, like 4 or 5 of you guys just came for winter break, and then when you leave, we already have people stacked up ready to come, and it's very amazing to see how the Lord He's like, okay, so you're doing this, I'll make sure that it's continuing to go on in the same manner. Even when I came back from India, I was thinking, oh gee whiz, this is going to be like a very difficult winter, because it's just going to be me and everyone else is going to be gone, so what are we going to do? But actually it's been very nice so far. I feel like I've not had to do very much. And so that's all I have to say. Atroruda shrajanmayam yoga maeshvare haro yam vilokya prajastrasta mineri syopasamyamam. The demon, however, employed many conjuring tricks against the personality of Godhead, who is the Lord of Yogamaya. At the sight of this, people were filled with alarm and thought that the dissolution of the universe was near. And so in summary, we talked about muhurtas, and we talked about different times that the demons made their conjuring tricks, and we talked about how just by remembering the Lord, all these demons, different tricks can be dissolved. And so if anyone has any comments or questions or complaints, please grab this microphone and make them.
Thank you for the nice class. I was thinking about Jai and Vijay when they were chosen, because Lord gave them a choice, whether 7 birth or 3 birth as the demons. Did they actually know that they going to fight with the Lord? Like, did they know how to please Him or not?
I don't know if I've read anything specifically saying that, but they did have the desire to fight for the Lord. And then somehow Yogamaya comes in and makes everything happen according to the desire of the Lord and their devotees. So sometimes the Yogamaya can actually act in such a way that the participants don't really know what's going on. Like, how are they going to really fight with the Lord if in the back of their head they know like, oh, this is my best friend? So it's sometimes necessary, and even Krishna gives Yogamaya the power to make him forget. So he also can really get into it, which is quite amazing. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
So did they like choose 3 births just because it's shorter amount?
Yeah, they didn't want to be separated from the Lord for that long, so they just 3 births is much better than 7 births. Although, why not just have 7 births where you just somehow get arranged, like all the kids of Mother, what was Krishna's mother's name? Devaki. All the kids before them just got immediately killed, so why not have some arrangement like that? Anyways, I don't know. If I could ask Giant Vijay questions, I would. Maybe when we're going back to God, we can ask them that. But I don't know exactly.
Hare Krishna, thank you for class. You were talking about the demon's illusory effects. So, and you mentioned the blood in the body parts, and these things are all like quite obvious. But in today's age, maybe these illusory effects might not be as obvious, but they still happen, yeah. And how can we kind of tell that it's like illusory or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, if the people that are, whatever they're making, if they're in control or if they're not devotees, then they're somewhat demoniac, and so somewhat they'll resort to these illusions and these lies and different things. And as devotees, how do we navigate that? It's difficult, as even when we hear when they're confronted with all these different devotees, Dhruva and Arjuna, and so on, they get bewildered themselves sometimes, and it always comes down to depending on the Lord. Those who are dependent on the Lord will get, if they're actually empowered by the Lord, Satatam Kirtayantamam, was 10:9. What is that? Tesham Satatam Yuktamam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. So if we're actually engaged in the service of the Lord with love, then Lord will give us the intelligence, and then he says in 10:11, he actually dispels the darkness of ignorance from within our heart. So the more that we depend on the Lord, the more that we can purely worship the Lord, then actually those devotees who are doing that, they'll be empowered to see through whatever illusions there are. And if someone is not so dependent on the Lord, they're more dependent on maybe the strength of their own intelligence or the strength of so many different material things, then maybe they'll get tricked, they'll get duped. So it's just this, it's not anything new, it's the same answer. I mean, we just have to get more pure, more chanting. Jayadvaita Swami always says that. He's like, it's no new answer, it's always the same answer, chant Hare Krishna. But that's the way in which it works. The Lord, He knows everything, and we can know whatever we need to know for our service. We can be, if we're doing our service sincerely, we can be sure, 100% that the Lord will give us exactly what we need. And so if what we need is to be able to see through some of these illusions, we can be sure that the Lord will give us that intelligence. And so we don't have that intelligence to see that, or we didn't, then one of either two things. One, we're not either doing our service so sincerely, so the Lord isn't really inspired to give us extra help, or that we don't require such things. Sometimes such things are very distracting, like someone was saying, I recently read they were watching a live sports game, and someone in front of them was listening on the radio, and the radio was announcing the things that were happening before they would happen when the person was seeing them with their own eyes. So some kind of illusion is going on, but for me to look into that and what's actually going on, it's that doesn't help me for my service. So I just try to keep chanting. And if we wake up during Brahma Muhurta, during the Sattvic time, and we get all that sattvic energy. Sattva guna means you can see reality for how it is. You don't get tricked by illusion. So just by waking up during Brahma Muhurta, chanting good rounds, that gives us so much protection from that. But should definitely also not be naive. We should know that the way that the Bhāgavatam describes it, we're in Kali Yuga, the demons are in control. There's going to be a lot of weird things happening in society that ultimately this movement is meant to help counteract and help pull people out of that. So that's Krishna Kripa Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Regarding the illusions, I'm not up all on the COVID conspiracy ideas, but there's some people accuse the people, involved in, curing COVID and promoting COVID and different things, that there's some illusions there, that they made it seem more serious than it was because they wanted to sell vaccines and all kind of stuff. So that there's like some people who've researched it say there's some real evidence for that kind of stuff. I was thinking about how in my own life the holy name benefited me, and just yesterday I was like feeling completely wiped out on Harinam, just standing there passing out these things for like 2.5 hours, and then it was my time to sing, and I felt really tired, so I prayed to my Guru and Prabhupada to be able to sing, and then I really just chose some lively tunes and put everything into it. And after that, I was just like so awake and alert the rest of the Harinam, and it was all because I surrendered to the holy name in a big way, So I see that, if I'm tired in the morning or I'm not unfocused, if I chant really loud in the kirtan, it really drives away the ignorance. So the loud chanting of the holy name is very good for driving ignorance out of your mind, whether it's illusion or lethargy or whatever.
Yeah, loud chanting, and something else you mentioned, which is also very important. Like Krishna says, man mana bhava mad bhakto, man mana, the mind, having control over our mind and doing things like praying to the spiritual master. Just our mind is so powerful we don't realize, like in the Bhāgavatam it says the mind has God-like powers. So it can just send a mental message to the Lord, to his representatives that we're connected with. The Lord can reciprocate, and that's actually our secret weapon in the fight. The demons don't depend on the Lord. And if they're, like Prabhupada says sometimes, like the thief, maybe he's praying to the Lord, may everyone be asleep, and may I easily steal all their stuff. And the people at home are praying, may no one come and rob us tonight, and maybe stay alive through the whole night. And so it's just who's making the bigger prayer. But for the devotee, they're not praying for material things like that, and so they get more empowerment from the Lord than anyone else. And so that's definitely key. If we don't have very many weapons, but we have the best, most subtle, most powerful weapons. Is there anything else? It's 8:58 almost. So, okay. Prabhu.
You're promoting the mode of goodness, and that you get enlightenment from the mode of goodness. And there's a nice section of the preface of the Nectar of Instruction that Jayadvaita Swami called our attention to when we studied it in Mayapur. In all spiritual affairs, one's first duty is to control the mind and senses. Unless one controls his mind and senses, one cannot make any advancement in spiritual life.
Whoa.
Everyone within the material world is engrossed in the modes of passion and ignorance. One must promote himself to the platform of goodness, sattva guna, by following the instructions of Rupa Goswami. Then everything concerning how to make further progress will be revealed. So,
yeah, sattva guna is amazing. Sattva guna is when everything happens. And in Bhaktisiddhanta, he would sometimes quip, if I could just raise one disciple from the mode of ignorance to the mode of passion, then everything would be successful. So what to speak of sattva guna? Passion is when we actually start doing things. ignorance is when we don't do things. And of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I hope he didn't mean that he was just trying to raise one person, but he was trying to give us a certain point of view that everyone's caught in these lower modes, and just to raise a little bit out of it is extremely powerful. With that, Hari Om Tat Sat, Hare Krishna.